Good evening, friends, and welcome. Today we are going to discuss about Apache Spark, and under this Apache Spark, we will be specifically discussing about one of its module, one of its feature, which is the machine learning library. Spark is known for its speed. It's built to work on big data. It's built for working on real-time data. And when we talk about machine learning on huge amount of data, big data, then the traditional tools and the Python programming language will not be able to cater to that demand. Now we will be utilizing Apache Spark, which is an open source framework, which works with distributed framework, and it also has a feature of memory computing. All these features basically help us achieve the machine learning modules to be deployed on big data in a very quick time. And we'll also see how we can do regression using machine learning using PySpark library. Now this is the history of Spark. It was initially developed in 2009, but it was made open source in 2010. And there are over 200 contributors who are working across the globe, in developing this particular open source framework. Now, Apache Spark is an interactive multi-step analysis tool, and we can use this on top of Hadoop cluster. Hadoop is a big data tool which works on distributed framework. So we will be able to handle very huge amount of data using Hadoop clusters. And on top of this Hadoop cluster, we will also have Spark, which will be able to get us the results at super speeds. Now, when we talk about Hadoop basically runs with a framework for computing, which is called as a MapReduce framework. This MapReduce framework was initially developed by Google, and Google published a white paper way back in 2004, 2005, which explains us on how we can compute huge amount of data, right, which is sitting on different systems. Way back in 2004, 2005, we did not have any distributed tools which can actually help us solve the big data problems. So that's when Google came up with this white paper for processing the data which is sitting on multiple computers. That concept was called as MapReduce, right? But the disadvantage with MapReduce is that the data that is residing on multiple computers on a distributed framework has to be accessed at each step of your execution, especially when you have iterative steps like or iterative algorithms like machine learning. Accessing the data which is on disk takes a lot of time. Hence, the processing will become very slow. That's the disadvantage with respect to MapReduce. But Spark solves that same problem of accessing the disk, right, by keeping the data in memory as much as possible. So Spark would initially read the data, right, which is on the disk, and then it stores that particular data in memory as long as possible, as much as possible. This way you don't have to read the data from disk. The data is already there in the memory. And Spark also executes the code. The execution happens in memory only. Now this way, the processing becomes faster. Right? That's the working model of Spark basically, and these are the features that Spark has. It's a super fast, interactive, in-memory cluster computing framework. And Spark was built only to meet the speed requirement and of course scalability requirement. It focuses only on these two aspects. And Spark is made or developed with a lot of inbuilt APIs which help us integrate with various different data sources. You can connect Spark with cloud data sources. You can connect Spark with the traditional databases. You can also access the data which is on a text file and process that using Spark. So a lot of integrations are possible directly by Spark. It works on a concept of distributed computing, which basically means when you have multiple computers interconnected. Let's assume I have multiple computers here which are interconnected with each other. So let's say I have 12 computers interconnected among each other. I'm calling this as a cluster. Interconnected. Okay. Now, when I have an external application that needs to be solved, this application is getting broken down into tasks. And these tasks will parallelly get executed in these multiple nodes. Right? So this way, the execution is getting very fast, parallelly as well as distribution, right? A distributed mode. Isn't it? So if I have 100 lines of code, assume this 100 lines of code is split into 20 lines each. So the time it takes to execute the code is reduced, isn't it? And the good thing is these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nodes are independently working with each other independently. That means at the same time, all these 20 lines of code will execute parallelly in all these 5 computers. This way, it reaches a very high speeds to complete the executions. And another advantage, as I said, is the in-memory computing. So to execute these 20 lines of data, you don't need to access the disk which is there here on these nodes. You would be accessing the data from memory. And that memory or that data which is residing in memory in Spark, we call that as RDD, Resilient Distributed Data Sets. We will see that in the next slides. So computation, when it is happening in the memory, the execution becomes that much faster. It is very easy to deploy, orders of magnitude fast, real-time analytics, machine learning, and language flexibility is another very good advantage that we have with Spark. That means you can write the Spark codes in different languages and API to work with different tools. As I said, there are a lot of APIs inbuilt in Spark which will help us connect with various data sources. Right? Not just data sources, but it connects with various tools. That's the advantage we have with Spark. And it has inbuilt machine learning functionalities, like how we use libraries or packages in Python and R respectively. Spark also has inbuilt packages for achieving machine learning algorithms. So these are the features to list out. Open source, it's free. It has distributed and parallel both capabilities in computing, and computing happens in memory. It works for iterative works and of course interactive applications. The data set that we are working with is distributed and stored in different computers. It does not stay in one computer. In the network, part of the data is here, part of the data is here, part of the data is here, data is here, right? So your data gets split. And On that distributed data, we will be able to do the applications. Now, another advantage that Spark has over Hadoop is that Spark is also capable to do real-time applications, real-time data processing using Spark streaming concept. There's a module called Spark Streaming. So using this module, we will be able to do real-time analytics, real-time computing. Whereas Hadoop is only capable of doing batch computation. It is not capable of doing real-time applications. Right? That's one of the advantages that Spark has. Now, language flexibility. You can write Spark programs using Python, Java, Scala, and of course, you also write programs in R and execute those programs in Spark. Now, Spark is developed using Scala. This is called as scalability language. Okay, and this is a hybrid programming language. So it is a hybrid programming language, which basically has, when I say hybrid, it has the capabilities of object-oriented and functional-oriented. Both capabilities are available in Scala, and your Spark is written using this. So it's like your mother tongue for Spark. So you can directly write Scala programs and execute it in Spark environment or Spark framework. You can also write Java codes, because Scala, when you compile it, it converts, right? The Scala code, when you compile, will convert into Java bytecodes. So internally, it is nothing but Java. You can also write programs in Python and R as well, right? And the good thing is you don't need specialized hardware to implement Spark. Even though you're working with very big data, we talk about big data, right? So if you want to process this, you need to have a very high capability, strong server, right? Very high capability server. But that is not required for Spark. We will be able to use Spark deployed on commodity hardware. Commodity is your regular hardware that we are talking about. Spark also comes up with other facilities or other features like scalability and fault tolerance. When we talk about your regular hardware, which are interconnected in the network, right? These are basically the regular computers or regular, hardware. So the chance that this fail is higher, right? The chance that one of the node fails is there. It's present. So even if one of the node fails, the execution of the application does not stop. Spark takes care of that task which is failed here by reassigning it to another node. So it has internally a mechanism to handle the false tolerance. It is OS independent. It can be worked with Windows or Linux operating system. It is generally used by data scientists, data analysts, data engineers for processing the data. So wherever you have big data, wherever your data, Spark can be utilized. And as I said, it is written in Scala programming. Now, Spark, because of its in-memory feature, it is said to be 10 times faster. Okay, Spark is said to be 10 times faster. That is because Spark is a multi-threaded software. Okay. Now, because of its in-memory feature, in-memory computing, this aspect, when we are doing an iterative execution, iterative code execution, Spark is said to reach 100 times speeds when compared to regular other programs that we are writing on big data. You talk about any MapReduce framework. based tool, any Hadoop tool, right? Compared to this tool, Spark is set to run 100 times faster. Okay. Now it achieves this speed even when it is storing the data on the disk. That is, for the first time, what happens is when you want to process some data, right? Data will be sitting in the disk, right? So Spark for the first time accesses the disk, stores the data into memory, right? Only for the first time. And for iterative jobs, the data is anyways in the memory, right? So you will directly access memory, it will not go to disk. But even at this disk speed, disk access, Spark is said to be 10 times faster when compared to any other program which is accessing the disk. That is because of its architecture, design. It's a thread-based application, and generally Spark runs on JVM. It is a single executor that we have, which executes the tasks. Each executor that we have, right, it can have multiple threads, right? These are like your, let's say this is your executor, it's like your processor, and we'll have multiple threads. These are like your channels where you get tasks assigned, right? Each executor can handle multiple threads. Now, further, when you look at each thread can have multiple tasks. And each thread can handle multiple threads simultaneously. So you're talking about executions at this level. So multiple tasks get executed parallelly using multiple threads, and these all parallel threads can be executed directly by a single executor, right? So a lot of speeds are achieved by this architecture because of your distribution and parallel computing capability. Now, because of this feature, it works like wonder when you're handling big data compared to any of your MapReduce framework. You talk about any MapReduce framework or code, it has high latency. Latency means the time you take or the time the code takes to give results. This is called as latency. And any of your MapReduce programming, it takes a lot of time here, hence you have high latency. Whereas Spark does not take that much time, right? Now this is basically the overview of Spark and why it's becoming so famous. When you look at when you look at Hadoop, when it was initially launched in 2004-13, it was like adopted, right, very heavily in the industry because it was now able to solve big data problems. But the challenge with Hadoop is that you want to do any specific solution you want to implement for any of your clients based on the data that they have, you have to learn n number of different tools. So under Hadoop ecosystem, there are huge number of tools that a single individual engineer has to learn, right? So practically it might not be possible, right? But when Spark released, people started adopting it because it has a unified engine, which basically means all the things that you are trying to do by individual tools here will be done by a single tool called Spark, right? That's the advantage we have with Spark. Now, when we talk about Spark, comparing with Hadoop, if you are familiar with Hadoop, you need to understand that Spark has two major components. It solves two major problems. One is the processing of big data. The other one is storage of the big data. You have a huge data, so storing that huge data, it will be able to solve the problem by this Hadoop component called HDFS. And processing, as I said, is MapReduce. Now, whereas Spark will have a single framework, which is processing framework. It will only have this component. It does not have storage component, right? So if you have a very big data, then obviously you will be able to, you'll not be able to store that using Spark, right? You need some storage device. So that basically is HDFS, which acts like a storage component for processing the, storing the data. And on top of that, we will use Spark for processing the data. And as I said, there are multiple tools which are required for processing the data based on different aspects. Whereas in Spark, you will be using the same software, but different capabilities that Spark has. Whereas here, these are different tools altogether. For SQL queries, SQL kind of queries where you will be basically dealing with structured data in big data space, Hive is used. Generally, it is Hive, which is used with respect to Hadoop. Whereas in Spark, you have a module called Spark SQL. Now, this Spark SQL is already covered as part of a webinar, which is hosted on YouTube channel. You can probably go through that. Now, we are basically talking about Mahout, which is a machine learning tool on Hadoop. In Spark, we have machine learning library, and this is what we are going to look at next. And another feature, which is Storm. This is another tool which is used for basically dealing with real-time data. Now in Spark, we have a module called Spark Streaming, and this is also already covered as part of our webinar, which is hosted in YouTube channel. You can probably go through that to get an overview of what does Spark Streaming means. Let us move on and discuss more about Spark, and then we will see how Spark machine learning is actually implemented. This is the difference between Spark and Hadoop. Now, as I said, Hadoop has storage and as well as compute framework, whereas Spark is only computing framework. Data is generally lying in HDFS when you deal with data on Hadoop, whereas while you're dealing with Spark, the data could be on the disk or in memory. It is not built for iterative work. Hadoop is not built for iterative work. You cannot do a repetitive job using Hadoop. It will take a lot of time. Whereas Spark is built to do that because the data sits in memory, right? You don't need to go to disk every time. So it is designed, in fact, it is made for doing iterative works, right? And it is it's very fast. It is capable to do real-time data processing, as well as it has capability to understand multiple languages. Now, when Hadoop was released or launched way back in 2004, 2005, there was this benchmarking test which was done on 100 terabytes of data. When Hadoop was used, MapReduce component was used, it took 72 minutes to execute that data using 21 computers which are interconnected together. Whereas in Spark, if you see, the same amount of data is executed just 23 minutes. Just 23 minutes, very less, compared to 72 minutes. But if you see this as well, the number of nodes is just 206 nodes. Right? Compared to 2100, we just have 206 nodes. And you can also compare it as and how the Spark data size increases, right? The processing of that Spark on that huge amount of data will linearly improve, linearly grow. It is not exponential. From 100 terabytes to 1000 terabytes, the time Spark takes to process this will increase 10 times because your data is increased 10 times. Processing time will also increase 10 times. So this was a world record in its own terms. Hadoop's benchmarking was a world record in those days. But when we tested with Spark, that world record was beaten like anything. 72 minutes compared to 23 minutes. Right? There's a huge difference. And on top of that, you also have to see this. How many computers were interconnected? How many computers were used? How many processors were used? Cores. Right? So we need to look at this as well to understand the capability of, true capability of Spark. And this is the architecture. This is the design basically for Hadoop. HDFS is, remember, the storage component. This is your storage component where your data is lying. So you are basically accessing disk to access the data, and then we do something called as map task. You will not worry much about this at this point of time. Assume that you are executing something and you will get results. These results, which are intermediate, will also reside on disk only. The results will have to be written onto the disk. And from their disk again, you're doing a disk IO, and here we'll apply a reducer job or reducer task, which will then give us the final result. And the final result will also have to sit on the disk only. Compare this processing with Spark's processing, where initially the data is on disk. Yes. But when you're executing Spark, the first thing that it does is store the data onto memory. And then we do the execution, Spark code. The results that we are getting, the intermediate results that we are getting, will again store back onto the memory only. And from there on, we further execute and give the final result on the screen. You don't need to save it. But if you want to save it, then yes, you access your HDFS. So here, if you see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 disk IOs, disk read and write access. Whereas here I'll have 1, if required 2, if required. So this is how Spark achieves the super speed. So Spark is based out of master and slave architecture. Spark architecture is master and slave. So the master is called as a driver program. This driver program is responsible for monitoring and making sure the complete execution is done to get the results. And the slave workers basically are called as executors, which run on slave nodes. Right? Now, Spark driver program will know where the data is, how to get the data and all that. And that information is available from cluster manager. This cluster manager in Hadoop is Yarn. Yet another resource negotiator. So your driver program, Spark driver program, will connect with cluster manager and then get the information on where, what, right, how the data is getting stored. And based on that information, Spark applications are getting executed on that respective nodes. So this is what happens. Your master, it assigns tasks to multiple slave nodes, and the results that we are getting will get saved here. Right? So this is how your Spark job is getting executed in a cluster environment. And these are basically Spark components. Spark is called as unified engine, generalized unified engine, which basically means Spark is a culmination of multiple scenarios, multiple things. When you write programs, you will be able to write your programs in any one of these 4 programming languages, and the execution of that code will happen using Spark framework. This is Spark framework, which has multiple layers, right, and different modules. So these are different modules or applications which are generally used to solve your business problems. Then we have data frame API. This is your data source. And finally, you'll have Spark Core, which basically is the core component of the entire Spark execution. And as you can see, it can directly connect with a lot of data sources. Now Spark SQL. Okay, then before Spark SQL, let's talk about fundamental component Spark Core. It's like the engine, driving force of entire Spark application. It is responsible for managing memory, managing the schedules. It will also maintain false recovery. It will be able to interact, right, with various data sources. My data is sitting in multiple different sources. I'll be able to interact with all of them, right? And Spark's core data abstraction is called as RDD, Resilient Distributed Data Sets. These are the main programs. This RDD is basically your data, but this data is residing in memory. But this memory is not of a single node, single computer. It is a memory of multiple computers placed together, right? So it's called as distributed memory. Your entire memory is distributed across multiple nodes, right? So that's your RDD. Next we talk about Spark SQL. Spark SQL is a way to work with structured data. Okay, we will be able to write structured data using Spark SQL, right? Then we have Shark. Your Spark initially was called as Shark. This specific module, which is basically nothing but SQL on Spark, right? Now that Shark, or the old capability, old Spark, is enhanced by adding the capabilities of SQL programming as well. And now we call this as Spark SQL. So it has the capability of SQL as well as HQL. HQL basically means Hive Query Language. Okay. That's your Spark SQL combination, SQL and HQL. Spark Streaming is a module which is able to process the real-time data like log files or social media analysis. Social media data analysis, which is relentlessly, continuously getting generated. And then we have machine learning library. Spark comes with the library which contains all the machine learning functionalities, majority of them. It's called as MLlib. And you can see MLlib contains all the algorithms for regression, classification, clustering, and collaborative filtering, etc., etc., etc. There are a lot of features that are available in Spark MLlib. Next, we also have something called as graphics. This is the module which is used for doing network analysis. And for Spark, these are the three building blocks. For any programming language or any framework, there should be three important aspects. One is, what is the execution engine? So Spark context is execution engine. Then distributed data sets, RDD, this is your data. And then operations. What do you want to do on that particular data set? So that logic is defined in operations, and where you are executing this, you are executing in the execution environment, which is known as Spark context. right? So those are predominantly the most important aspects of Spark. Spark SQL, Spark Streaming, MLlib, GraphX, packages, right? Now let us talk about Spark MLlib specifically. Spark MLlib is basically the machine learning aspects, data mining aspects that can be implemented on big data. There are few cases, use cases where more the data, better the training that your computer gets. Right? So machine learning is basically depending on big data. Machine learning basically means your computer learning from data. And of course, you have a lot of data, then learning becomes easier. It is computationally intensive. Intensive means very, very demanding, very hard work. Right? So machine learning is computationally very, very expensive. And there are a lot of examples like Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook, right, which are basically dealing with internet data like that. But eventually, all that we want to do using machine learning is predictive analytics, right? So huge amount of data is available, increasing computational power is required, and day by day there is a lot of progress which is happening to your algorithms, right? And thanks to open source community, a lot of people are now starting to basically appreciate Spark, but based of its feasibility. And yeah, the same points. Applications from your machine learning. You have classification, regression, clustering, anomaly detection, and recommendation engine. Right? And yeah, machine learning algorithms basically fits the data that we have. To fit it, we need to find out what is the pattern, and to find out the pattern, we basically apply these multiple models and check which model is better fitting the data. Now, machine learning is broadly classified into supervised learning and unsupervised learning. Of course, we'll also have reinforcement learning, which is based on designed based on your video games. It's based on feedback mechanism, reward based. So when you do a task and if you get a reward, you probably continue doing the same task again and again, right? So reinforcement learning is based out of that logic. So we will be able to do most of these supervised and unsupervised learning modules. Now when we talk about supervised learning, the supervised learning basically should should be built in such a way that we know the evaluation also for your data set. We need to evaluate the model, right? In order to evaluate the model on the data set, given data set, we split the data set into 70-30. We hide the 30%, call that as test data, and we use only training data, right? And once you train it, you get a model, and that model has to be tested. We need to evaluate it on test data set. This data set is assumed to be new data. So we are training the algorithm. It's like you're training a person, and you're also testing it. How do you test him? If you give the same question, obviously he will answer better, right? So try and frame the question from the same syllabus, a new question, and see whether he is able to answer the question or not, right? And if the answers are basically given in the best possible way, right, whichever person is giving you the best possible solution, you basically go with that person, right? And that's exactly what we are doing here as well. Okay, So this is basically your supervised learning, which is based on evaluation model as well. And for unsupervised learning, there is no evaluation. You don't need to calculate, you don't need to partition the data, you don't need to calculate training data, test data, and all that. Okay. So this is the quick overview of your supervised learning and unsupervised learning. Now in Spark, let's come back to Spark. In Spark, there are two libraries for machine learning. One is MLlib, the other one is Spark ML. Spark ML is not being aggressively updated. It's a pipelines based module. Whereas a lot of research is happening in MLlib, Spark MLlib, so you'll have a lot of traction there. Right? And using it, we will be able to access the regularly used algorithms. And these algorithms can be applied onto large data sets, very large data sets. Scalability and the algorithms becomes faster as well. Right? It can scale up to different numbers, 20,000, 30,000 nodes. Right? And ultimately, Spark will be able to handle both real-time data as well as offline data. Now, how many of you remember this logistic regression? In logistic regression, we try to predict a binary output. Right? So let us try and do this binary output prediction on a given data set. Logistic regression gives us an equation which is mathematically represented as y is equals to beta naught plus beta 1 x1 plus beta 2 x2 plus so on and so forth. But this result that we are getting will have to be substituted in probability function. Okay, this is how logistic regression is calculated. This equation is going to give us probability of y being true. The probability of being true is 1. Is basically this. That probability of event true basically means y is equals to 1. Remember I said logistic regression predicts binary outcome, which basically means your output is either 0 or 1. Right? So we will be able to predict what is the probability of your output being equal to 1, and that is calculated using this equation, where y is calculated using this equation. Okay, this is your logistic regression. So this is the equation, and this equation we will get y value, and using that y value we substitute that in this equation, probability function, and automatically you will get the probability results. Now to evaluate the accuracy of the model, we will be using confusion matrix. Hope you are already aware of this particular confusion matrix. Okay, and let's say this is my profile. Let's not get into that at this point of time. Let's look into the hands-on. So we'll try to do logistic regression on a logistic company which basically deals with delivery of the products. Okay, let's assume it is FedEx. Now, given the bunch of features, I will have to predict whether a product is getting shipped or not. We have shipping or non-shipping data. Okay, let me remove this. Let me go to the code. Now, what you're basically seeing is my spider, which is used to run Python codes. Right? So we are using the same Python and installing Spark on Windows operating system and using your Python to execute the code, the PySpark code for machine learning. In order to use Spark, we basically say find Spark. Oh, sorry, I have to import this. Okay, let me import this. Okay, that's because I don't have Spark module installed. So in order to install Spark, we basically have to go to Spark page, Apache Spark, download. And this is your Spark page, spark.apache.org. You need to download this. Navigate to the location. In the meantime, let me pull up the virtual machine so that I can show the execution of the same code in Linux environment as well. Okay. It will take its time to launch. In the meantime, we will download Spark. So this is how your Spark page looks like. The latest version is Spark 3. Okay. But we'll not go to the latest one. We will go one version lower, 2.44. And here we will be choosing 2.7 or later. Download this. You just click on this. It will download the software. Okay, it navigates you to this page. Basically, this is a cloud space where you have the software stored. I'm downloading it and having it here. Okay, I think it's going to take much time. Okay. I think we have to use virtual machine. It's not working. Okay, let me cross check. Okay. All right, it's launching now. Hopefully it will launch. We are basically logging into virtual machine so that I can start off Hadoop services, and then on top of that Hadoop I can utilize Spark code to execute the program that we are trying to execute now. Logistic regression on very big data. I should have executed this. I mean, I would have started this some time back, but yeah, nevertheless, I will show you how to start the Hadoop services as well. So let us log in. It's taking a while to launch. Yeah. Now to start your services, we need to open terminal and initially check whether Hadoop services are up and running or not. And you can see there is Hadoop services not running here. So to start your Hadoop services, we need to say start dfs.sh. It will launch the Hadoop services. Initially, it is launching the storage component services. It will prompt for the password. We'll have to give the password. Right. So now if you say JPS, you can see three services are up and running: secondary name node, data node, and name node. These are the three services which are taking care of the storage component of Hadoop. Similarly, we have to start YARN services to start the computing capabilities of Hadoop. Now, once I start the services, it should show, when I say JPS, it should show 6 values here: secondary name node, node manager, resource manager, data node, and name node, and of course JPS itself. So in total you will have 6 values that is shown when you execute JPS. Right? Now let us see if I have Spark code here readily available. I don't have the Spark code readily available. So what we will do is pull this data. I'll copy the data set and of course the code onto our Hadoop here. All right, so we have saved this successfully. On the terminal, if you see, you have fedex.csv, that's the data set. If you open the data set, let me open it in the text editor. It's a very, very huge data. You can see it is still loading here, right? Let's minimize that. It will take its own sweet time to execute. This basically is a 220.4 MB data. And it has year, month, date of week, right? All these things. Let me close it. Let's not waste the processing capability of my system. Let me show you the code. All right. So this is basically the code which will talk about the data set. We are loading the data set first initially. So let me say home test data. This is the path where we have saved our data set, right? So I'm importing this data set as, right, a data frame. You need to use this spark.read.csv. Of course, to execute this, we need to import PySpark library. That is basically you're calling Spark framework from Python. Okay, let me show you that as well. Let me open another terminal. Okay, I've opened a new terminal here. I'll keep it aside. Parallelly, I'll try to copy paste and execute this. All right, so this is my basically the execution environment. Here I'll say PySpark. All right, so we have imported Spark. The Spark version is 2.3.4, but Python version is 2.7. Let's see if I'm able to execute this. I'll copy and paste it here. Let me check if this would work. Yeah, it's not working because of what's the issue? Let me just check the error. It's not able to read this. That's because here I'm saying file this path, right? So I have to basically say this is local path. So here I have to mention file : // If I don't give this file // it basically understands that the data set is stored in Hadoop location. Okay, let me close this and see what is user one. So this is the path I have to give. Here I have to say /home/user1 then /FedEx. Let me just say vi. Okay, we have successfully loaded the dataset now. Now if I say print schema, let me see the schema here. Okay, DF is not defined. That's because this particular version that we are using is Python 2.7 and it will not work in Python 2.7. So I have to basically import or execute these commands for importing Python 3. So let me close this off and paste it to make sure I have Python 3. So these are simple steps that you will be installing to get Python latest version, Python 3 version. Okay, you just have to import Python pip. Pip version. Okay. Okay, I'm just importing Python pip version. I'm not importing Python 3. Okay, you can say pip -- version, and it's this version. If I say pip 3, pip 3 is fine. Okay, perfect. So we have pip version which is latest for Python 2, 8.1.2. Let's redo this. Let me check if the old version is taking up. And here I have to say y:// syntax. Where did I put the wrong syntax here? Oh, yeah. Okay. Unexpected. Oh, sorry, my bad. I have not entered into PySpark. Okay, let me open the code in Notepad. Edit, gedit. I will distribute version like this. Let me save this. So we'll say home/user1/FedEx. And you will say file : /. Let me execute it here. Again, hopefully it executes in Python 2. Otherwise, I have to import Python 3 as well. Okay. If dot. Okay. So it's not possible to work with Spark 2. So let me upgrade to Spark 3, Python 3. So Python 3 updation is basically done by these commands. Let me just quickly execute this and get on with this. I will be sharing all this, yeah, provided you can basically connect with me. I'll be sharing all this steps as well. Yes, Hannah, you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Is these are these steps in a written form? Can we have it in a written form? I mean, I got lost. I
Yeah,
can't
so
follow you
you can
really.
see the steps on the screen, right? It's a simple steps that I have.
These are the ones.
Yeah, yeah. This is to upgrade your Python. These
Okay.
are basically the steps for Spark, logistic regression code. That's the code is what we are trying to execute here. This is the code that we are trying to execute. But Spark, sorry, Python 2 does not have the capability to understand all these commands. We need to upgrade our Python, and that's what exactly we are doing. I was trying to see if Python 2 will execute this, but unfortunately it was not executing. So we are updating.
Okay. I'll replay this, and I hope I can follow your steps for upgrading Python 2.
Perfect. Yes, yes. Please do that. And if you have any questions, you can always connect back to me. I can help you on any errors that you might encounter.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
I think it will take a lot of time. Let me see if I can bring this down here. All right. So we are importing, we are executing the same code in Windows now. In Linux, we have few challenges, right, with respect to Python 2. So the first thing is we need to bring in the FindSpark module. We have imported that, install that using pip install FindSpark, then import FindSpark, and then you can say initialize it. And from here, import PySpark.sql, and from there you are basically calling Spark session. Okay, and this Spark session is basically the context, is the execution environment that we are building here. And I'm calling that as Spark, and I'm giving this application a name, right, using Spark session. I'm defining my context, execution environment basically. So it's now basically reading the resources that I have in my computer. It's a local execution, right? So it's looking into the resources, and it is creating the execution environment Spark. Okay, this is the Spark session which is created. It got a unique ID as well. Now I'm importing the data set. It's a very big data set. Let it get loaded. Yeah, we've loaded that. Now, if you look into the data set, we have not given any name or any column name or any data type to it. But when you say print schema, okay, I re-executed this email. Sorry about that. Yeah, when I say print schema here, it interprets the data types. Automatically, it understands what is each data type here, right? And now I'm importing pandas to create a data frame from the Python object that we have loaded. Okay. And from that data frame, I'm just showing you the first 5 records. Take 5 basically showing you the first 5 records, but this is basically not in a good readable format. So we will do a transpose of that. So you just add transpose command. Now this will give you a proper visualization. We are transposing the columns here into rows and rows into columns so that a better arrangement is there. Okay. Next, when we did print schema here, you can see that there are a lot of string data, non-numeric data as well, right? You can see that here. So this is a non-numeric data. These are all non-numeric data points, right? So we are ignoring all those non-numeric data and we are capturing only the data which is in integer form. Because I have to do numerical calculations while doing regression, I want to take only numeric data here for execution. For this example, we are doing it. We are considering only the numeric data. Hannah, I'm available on WhatsApp group. You can connect with me. I'm basically from India and this is my India number. You can probably connect with me. Okay. All right. So we have transposed and you can see it's basically trying to describe the data here for the data frame. All right, so we have basically brought only the numeric values. Okay, we are getting only the numeric values, right? I'm calling those numeric features, and you can see when I say df.select, it's like a SQL query that we are doing. We get only those numerical features. So all the features which were string here are ignored, are removed. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? All these string categories are gone, right? And once I have the numeric variables, I'm importing a module called as ml.feature from PySpark. And from that module, I'm calling one hot encoder estimator, string indexer, and vector assembler. These are the 3 functions we will be utilizing now to arrange our data so that we can do regression. Now I'm defining all those input variables here as input. I'm creating a Python list. These are all the input variables, right? So I'm giving those names here. And I'm converting all this into a vector. It's a list initially, but I want a single vector with all these values. So vector assembler, the input would be this input list and the output from that command would be a single column which is called as the features. This is done using the module called a function called vector assembly. So I'm defining what needs to be done and here I'm defining how to do it. Stages. At each stage you are doing this. First stage, it's an empty list. Second stage, it is going to take one feature and add it into a vector. Then again you are repeating that until all the stages are completed, till you have all the variables here are included into that features vector. Next, the output that I want to identify, which is basically whether the product is delivered or not, that's the delivery status, that would be called as a label. Here again I am basically converting this into a vector, string indexer. Here also I'm saying stages is equals to plus equals to label string index, right? So here I get input, which is a list, stages. We are converting this vector indexer and string indexer, right? These are the two stages that I am going to generate. And I have a function called as pipeline, which is executing these stages. It executes those stages so that I get the final result of labels and features, and of course output and input. That's basically your output and input, right? Now these are your selected columns, and along with the vectors I'm also passing the input string as well, input list as well. And you can see here I'm converting that into a data frame, prepped data frame, and you see label is a double, this is your output. Features is a vector, this is your input set. These are the combination of all the features that are there in this particular variable. Okay. Then I'm trying to show you the content. This is the content of your columns, labels, and all that. You can apply transpose here. You could say transpose to see the content like this in a detailed way, right? Rows and columns will be altered here. And then I'm doing logistic regression from PySpark ML library. Under classification, you have logistic regression. You are importing that. And this is the function. You are passing input and passing output. And for logistic regression, you have to do max iterations. And when you do this, it is defining the structure of your logistic regression and fitting the data here. We fit the data. So you can see it is getting trained on that huge number of records. Now, when I work on distributed computers, distributed nodes, cluster nodes, then the execution is getting parallelly executed from all the computers. So the execution becomes much faster. Now, as part of this example, I am doing the execution on a single computer, right? So that would be the huge difference that you will encounter when you are doing the execution in a cluster setup. If you have two computers, the execution is basically splitting the entire records into two data sets and parallelly executes. If you have 10 computers, the data set is split into 10 different partitions, and each node gets its own small data set share and it trains on that particular data set. So parallelly, when you split the data and execute, execution becomes much faster. All right. Then we have, once the training is done, we get the coefficients, the beta values. These basically give us the equation. These are the coefficients, and we have beta naughts, the intercepts as well. Right? Now, using these intercepts, using the training, we will have to predict. For prediction, I'm partitioning the data set, and I'm taking the test data set and predicting on test data set here. Done. So these are the first 5 predictions, and you can see all of them are 0 labels. That means the delivery status is 0. It has not yet been delivered. The products have not been delivered yet. Right? So this is how we are going to execute logistic regression on large data sets, very huge data sets, using Spark MLlib module. So the coding would remain, the structure of the coding would remain pretty much same. It's just that you're manipulating the data a little more when compared to your regular Python. Right? So this is the sample code for logistic regression, friends, using PySpark. Do we have any questions?
Hello, Mr. Shurat.
Hi.
Good afternoon. This is Mukhtar.
Yeah, hi Mukhtar. How are you?
I'm fine. I just wanted to ask how to interpret this table, these 5 rows that we already done.
Sorry?
The planet shipment time is
Uh-huh.
30 days, 40 minutes, or what?
This is the input. Yes, this is the input data we already have. Yes, this is 30 minutes.
30 minutes, and the delivery time it will be in
I think,
444.
no, this is not 30 minutes. Sorry, this is 30 days. My bad.
30 days.
Yeah, this is 30 days. Planned
Yeah.
delivery time is these many days.
Okay. Distance is 1,400
Yes, distance is in miles, kilometers. Sorry.
kilometers.
Yes.
Okay. This regression is we can see is a little bit more complicated than the original Python one.
That is because you have this requirement where your input data has to be converted into a vector. You can see here,
Mm-hmm.
we need data in vector format. We cannot directly pass the data. Of course, there are a lot of research happening, a lot of updates coming up to this MLlib. So pretty much very soon you will see the codes which would be very similar to Python coding.
Without vectorized, because I can see Python and R combined in this, because it's a
It is
vector to
not
vectorize
Python
things
and
is
R,
R
it
thing.
is pure Python, but we are also using SQL queries along with Python queries. It's Python, it's not R.
Yeah, but the vectorized things, when we can vectorize for the data to be vectorized, it's object oriented. It's remind me R, and then we are
Okay.
writing the code in Python. Yes, I
Yeah. Yeah, I
and
understood
also
from where you are coming up. Yes.
mhm.
Remember, Spark was developed using Scala, and Scala is an object-oriented programming
As
language
well.
as well.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, sir.
Most welcome, Mukhtar. All right, friends. If you have any questions, we can continue. Please ask me the questions. Otherwise, thank you so much. We'll connect again in another webinar with the latest topic. Until then, thank you so much.